Hello everybody, my name is Klemen. I come from Netis company from Slovenia, and today I'll be talking about mainly two things. I start with, let's say, self-sovereign identity, and then I connect with IoT sphere. Maybe some of you know both of these things, and you might wonder, why do we need blockchain here? Or you might even say, okay, there's everything already developed, so what are you doing now? And is there anything new to say? And as you'll see, not everything that's present today in today's world is perfect. There are many things that actually can be improved. And as we believe it in our firm, and me as I believe it, we can do it with blockchain technology. So, as I said, nothing is perfect, so I would like to start with the problems. The problem that we sort of identified when we actually start digging into these topics. I will start with you as a person that how can you interact with other peoples, or peoples, or companies, or any other entities that you come across. For this thing, you normally need some sort of identities. So today, how does it look like? You come to some website, you have username, you have password, you log in, and what we found out, there are some problems with that. First thing that is probably, if you are any Bitcoin or blockchain topic talks, you will see that there are problems with central authority. And here, I think there is really obvious problem that happens with your personal data. Because if your data, as your personal data, is stored by one center point, there are at least two problems. One is that they actually have this data. They can do with the data many things. Okay, they might be regulated by some law or something, then they should not do it, but you don't really have control over it, what is going on. And the other problem is, these companies normally store a large amount of data. So this is really a nice target for hackers. If they somehow penetrate the defensive systems of these companies, they can get to, maybe if it's some small company that holds your data, it's maybe tens or hundreds of people, but with large companies it can go to millions or even billions. Now, there is a second problem emerging from the user's perspective. If you want to use some service you come across on the internet, even if it's some absurdly obscure service, you normally need to make some username to go to some registration process. This means every time you come somewhere, you need to input your first name, last name, your address, I don't know, mobile number, email numbers, the things that are same for you all the time, but if you come to some new site, and even if you use it just for once, you still need to go through all this input procedure. And there is another problem that comes together with it. For each of these sites, you need to create some username. If you are lucky, you can actually have the same username all across different sites, but it often happens that when you come to some website, it's okay, your username is already taken, please remember, come up with some new one. Or maybe for the passwords, there are somewhere different requirements and you cannot just use the same password everywhere, and also it's not really secure. There are some solutions for this with some, I don't know, password management software, but let's say that that's also not like the best option to go around it. And there is another problem, maybe not so present recently, but if you want to log to some of these sites on some computer that is either public or you don't trust it, or even on your computer you can get some malware that is actually scanning what you're typing in. It can happen that your credentials are stolen and then used on some other location. And this thing, what we're seeing about this happens a real lot in practice. Here is some iconographics of attacks and data breaches through the year. It here starts from 2014 to the recent years, and actually already at the beginning, these small circles, they present data breaches where millions of users were affected by the data breach. And as you can see, maybe in the past there are not so many of them, but here in last years, we can see it happens basically all the time, and millions, billions, or large amount of people are actually affected by these problems. Maybe just from the last years, there are some of them really also that get some publicity traction, especially I think the most famous one is with this Cambridge Analytica and Facebook with over 50 million that were affected, but there are even bigger cases of Marriott or Adhar, where was actually, for the last case, there were over 1 billion people that were actually attacked in the single of these events. So do we actually have a solution? We sort of believe that we do, but just before going to it, I would like to show you that there are sort of similar problems also in one of the other topics of your life that you might not even be so aware of. And we actually, with the same approach, we can solve, let's say, both of these problems. The thing that I will be talking now in next few slides is about the security problems with IoT. Because every device that you're using, I mean, at least in these recent days, there are a lot of devices connected to internet all the time. So we would really like to see that what we are doing with them, they are secure. But just to show you a few headlines from IoT, from the newspapers, the situation is not better than if you compare it to the login pages as I showed before. And one thing, you see, in these days, virtually everything can be hacked. From printers to cars, and basically everything that comes in between. And maybe there are even things that maybe you won't even imagine is possible. For instance, this attack to cut heat of the apartments, and you can actually really make it unpleasant to all the people that are using these devices. So where does the problem actually origin in this case? The problem is that current infrastructure is really complicated. So imagine I'm a user, I have a device 1 meter away from me, and if I want to send it some command, if I want to get some data from it, the whole flow goes from me to, I don't know, my router, then to some central authority that is actually sort of handling these permissions, and from there, maybe from another country, maybe from the other side of the world, it sends the command back to our device, and it do a thing that we actually ordered from it. So this actually leads to this, that there are many points where the device can be attacked. So it can be attacked in a way that the attacker can get control over it, or maybe just take some sensitive data away from it to use it against you. Maybe just to sum up these problems similar as before, the first thing is really similar to the central authority in the login problems, because because again, this central authority is holding a large amount of these, let's say, credentials from devices, and if they are attacked, the devices can be took over, or even your data can be stolen from it. Then, from the user point of view, there is again this really unpleasant situation if you have many different devices, especially if they are from different manufacturers, they would come with different app to manage them. So if you have a phone, or let's say a smartphone that you can operate these devices, you just first need to actually find the app and then do whatever you wanted to do with the device. But here, compared to before, we have additional possible attack vector, and here is to attack the devices directly. Because they are connected to internet, they are always listening for some command that is coming to them. They must be virtually open all the time. And these devices, most of them are not really capable of taking care of themselves in terms of security measures. So if you find some IoT device somewhere, it's normally really easy to find out what is the, let's say who manufactured it, what firmware is on it, and there are known vulnerabilities on these devices, and most of them are not really patched regularly, so it's pretty easy to actually get this control over the devices. So now let's look at how can we approach and tackle these problems. If there are anything that we can actually improve in these settings. And actually, the question is, can blockchain here actually help in some sort of way? Maybe just to start it, I normally show this slide just to remind you of some of the properties that come with blockchain. These are not the old properties that come with it, even maybe there some some of them are not so important, but if you look at the first row, blockchain sort of, not say introduced, because peer-to-peer communication is known for a very long time, also decentralization, but with this technology it really, let's say, it got some other way of using it. Because if you remember, in both cases, there the problem, one of the biggest problems was central authority. And isn't this just looks like perfect? We use a blockchain, we get rid of the central authority, we actually got rid of one of the problems that I presented before. Maybe it's not as easy as I'm just talking around here, but at least this technology is sort of promising that we can do it in this way. And to tackle the other problems, I agree we need to actually build a bit more. So for this reason, I'm presenting here our solution from our company called NextTech. And maybe just to start with the foundation of it, there are actually three, let's say, major building parts. Here the first, on top of it, you see, we say that we use a private chain. It's not completely necessary, but if we are thinking in the enterprise sort of reasoning, and also from the user side of experience, the public permissionless chains are, for the operation I'm talking today about, for the communicated with IoTs or maybe for the login credentials, are not really suitable because they are, at one hand, they are slow, relatively slow, and on the other hand, they are costly, and users don't really want that. We can get, with private chains, we are able to actually make different kind of consensus mechanism, let's say proof of authority, which is virtually real time. We are able to confirm in our system blocks as fast as, let's say, 50 milliseconds. And on the other hand, we can get rid of this transaction fee. Then the other thing that is really important is then the decentralized storage, because if we are talking about the devices or even with people personal data, there are many data that on one hand they are too heavy to store on blockchain, and even from the personal data, at some points you might want to have the control over the data you put there, maybe to delete it, to alter it, to change it if it's necessary. Because if you put it directly to the blockchain, it's impossible, and also it would be visible to other people, and that's the thing that we don't really want. And there's now the third building part, that most of other companies that are developing on blockchain normally don't really put so high on top of the priority, but we do. And this is the self-sovereign identity. So every participant in the network should have some sort of identity. It might not be even, let's say, validated or something, but they should have it. And okay, it's easy. Some of you say it's easy to use the blockchain. You already need to have your public-private key. Actually, that's the thing where we started, but then we also extend it to, let's say, more human, understandable way of this identity. Then when you have all these three starting building blocks, you can apply it to IoT, you can use it with some smart contracts. If you want, you can even introduce your token for any side of economic needs, if you have any of them. Maybe to point out, it's not necessary that you have tokens for anything. For our case, when we have these IoTs, we don't even, or for login, we don't use any tokens. But if some company would need for some sort of their operation, it's really convenient to do it, because our solution is basically based on Ethereum. So whatever can be done on Ethereum with their smart contracts can be easily applied also in our setup. And once you have all this, you can start building real dApps, real decentralized application. And on top of it, you can then start to search for all the verticals when you can apply this technology. Now, maybe to talk just a bit more about these several identity other building blocks. Here, now we put the user with all its personal data in center. So user has an ID, user has personal data, and now he can do with them whatever they want. How does this look in practice? The other participants in the network, companies, all the applications on your device, they get some sort of ID, and whenever they communicate, I with my ID communicate with your ID. Now, for that this thing can actually work, we need these two layers that I was talking before. Now, first about the blockchain, what is purpose here? Another purpose, actually, blockchain is the thing that got rid of the centralized system, the centralized authority. And now the problem is because the centralized authority before was taking care who can log in, who can communicate with his device or something. But actually, blockchain with smart contracts can completely take over also this task of actually making permissions for me to communicate with somebody else. Now, if you want to go a step further, to share data with companies or something, with additional layer, and this is decentralized storage. Now, if you remember before, the companies were the one actually holding the user personal data. Now, in our settings, we change things a little. User normally has his own data, or let's say on his phone or some device. And if there is some company that wants to use his data, he doesn't give it directly to them, but he stores to this decentralized storage. After that, these data are there, but they are actually encrypted in a way that other people cannot read it unless user gives them permission. This permission is based again on the identity of the one that wants to read the data. And what user have to do it? He does it with application, but that is going on background. This permission from user with his ID, it's written to the smart contract, and there is this pairing with user's ID and company's ID, which tells the system that this company now can access the data. So the main difference is now that the data is not really stored at the company, and user actually still have the control over the data. He can change it, he can delete it, and or actually he doesn't really delete it. He just takes away the access from the company, and they are not able to use them anymore. And for this purpose, we developed let's say, some demo cases, some proof of concept. Here is the idea how can log in to some service, some page could look today. You come to some website. On this website, it has already ID, maybe of company, maybe of the application itself, and it provides you with a QR code, and here it says in this QR code, I want this and this data from you. You have your mobile app where you actually store your personal ID, you scan it, and you see what the site is asking from you, and then you can either confirm or revoke this request, and if you actually allow it, the data can access to your data. Now, maybe some of you will say this part here was different compared to some, I don't know, Google logins, some sort of other logins when you do really similar procedure. Well, the things that is different here, in this case, when you would log in with your Google account or something else to some other site, Google is the one that is holding your data and it serves it to this page. Now, in our case, you are the one that are putting data to this middle layer and then allowing for the page to access it. And maybe not just to talk about it, we actually have a live demo here.
But would be called the photographer if you're going to demonstrate something like that.
Okay. In the meantime, I can actually explain you some of these.
Never mind.
Okay.
Let's get it. What? Do you want to? Is it something that?
You can feel. I mean, everything's on screen, so maybe.
It's on screen. It's not on this.
I won't show this demo now because I think I won't have so much time. But if we are in time, I will show also this. But I think this with ID is a little bit more important. So. Yeah, I think I was a bit too slow, but anyway. So now I have this application here developed by us. Maybe you can't probably you can't really see, but here are input my personal data, my name, my surname, whatever. And the good thing is, when I install this app, okay, I need to insert it, all the data. But now, when I came to, let's say, to one of the pages that wants to get my data, I go to login. I scan the QR code, or maybe I will do it here because of the resolution. Now what it's asked me, it say this page here wants from me my phone, my name, whatever. Everything's already written here, so I don't have to input it again. And some of the data might be like requirement because we need it for some of the operations that or the service that we want to use. And some of them might be even for me to decide whether I want to share them or not. Let's say that at the moment I want to share everything. I call authorize, and as you'll see on the screen, this page will actually, okay, I forgot to go online. I will just do it again. It happens, it helps if you are, okay, just try it again. Okay, basically the same. I click authorize. Now it sends the data to the page. As you can see, although it's on blockchain, it was done virtually in the instantly. Now the things that I was advocating before, maybe I don't want to. At some point, I decide I don't want to share all of the data again, still with this company. I have here the access management, and if you remember before, there were some of the optional datas. Let's say I say you don't really need this anymore, and when I click authorize again, you will see the last 4 of the fields should go away. Or even if I really don't want to share it at all with you, I have the possibility to actually revoke the whole access, and page doesn't have access anymore. Maybe a word about actually coming to the page second time. Now, because I revoked the access, I would again need to authorize to have my data. But if I didn't revoke it, when I came to the page the second time, I would just scan the QR code, the same QR code. It's not that I need to go once to register, once to log in, or whatever. And because my phone would know, or the blockchain would know that we are already paired, there are permission given, I would be logged in instantly. And this is the thing that we are sort of trying to present with our identity and its user experience. Now going back to things. Yeah, maybe this case here, maybe you might wonder what is this thing. Here we also have, I now presented the login, but we also have the demo for the IoT. If any of you is interested, I can show it later. But the basic idea is this represents sort of smart house, but it's not convenient to carry house around, so we put it in this box. And you can then we can then simulate how we would operate with devices that are in this house. Maybe just before I finish with the presentation, the things that is solved here with blockchain, because many of you, or the one that are now about IoT, would say there is really no need to blockchain to do it. There is one thing that we solved with this approach, and if you remember, there was possibility of direct attack on the device. Because the device is already always online, you are able to make some attack directly on it. Now in this setup here, things change a little bit, because device here doesn't actually is not actively waiting for the commands from the outside world. It just listens to blockchain if there is some command that actually came for it. This practically looks in a way that there is really no inbound traffic, like ports inside are actually closed. You just need to have open one port on the outside, so it cannot be hacked directly. And there is one thing. It executes the commands when it reads from the blockchain that there was something for it. If there was some malicious attacker that would want to actually store some comment on blockchain and then pretend that he is able to actually operate this device, there will be smart contracts and blockchain itself that will take care of it. So we put the security part on the blockchain, so device doesn't really have to care whether the command is true or false, because anything that comes to it should be okay by default. Okay. It's just now to wrap up everything. This whole our system, if there were some concerns about the privacy, it's there by the cryptography. We can also, with this distributed system, make sure that no data gets lost, even if some of the nodes or some of the participants that are storing your data would go offline. There then can be retrieved from the other ways. And the thing that is probably the most important one is that the data is actually controlled by the user. And maybe the thing that were really popular lately was this GDPR compliancy. We actually were talking with some of the specialists on this topic, and they are not really keen of actually giving some confirmation, but they said that this solution actually really looks like GDPR, that it is GDPR compliant by design. So from this point of view also, it's even for the companies that want to make some services, they can actually use this solution and they don't have this fuss about the GDPR. So yeah, with this I conclude my presentation, and if there are any questions here, I'm glad to happy to answer them.
Is this, do you plan to monetize this, or is this like kind of open source?
There are actually, we are enterprise. Yeah, actually we are enterprise oriented, so there are ideas how to monetize it. We are not going in the direction that the user would have to actually pay for it, because nobody would use it. But companies that are implementing our login, they might go into, I don't know, some consortium or I don't know, whatever, that they would set up these nodes where this chain would run at. And we as a service, we as a company are selling our knowledge and this technology for these companies yeah, that sort of, yeah. Yeah, please.
I know a startup from Zagreb, was their pitch like 7 days ago. They're managing digital identities, but they are not using blockchain right now. And they're also going, their business model is also B2B. So my question is like, blockchain as a technology here in this use case, what does it enable for the users? Is it faster? Is it like, what does the user see in his experience that's better with blockchain?
One thing is this concept of, faster. It can be as fast as current system, because current systems centralized are really fast. So this is hard to beat. With private chains, we can come close to it. So that's not an issue for it, I would say this way. But the things that are benefit for it is, one is that the user can get control over the data. And the other thing is, again, okay, what was I thought? Okay, I think the most important one would be this control over the data. So I think that's the main property. Anything else?
Thank you.